Hello boys, girls, people from other worlds. My name is Star-Punz. Do you guys ever have an aneurysm after an altered alberventris invaded your internal software in an effort of exploiting malware practices for a sole amusement of trying to ascend into nirvana? Yeah, I hate when that happens. Sonic.Exe! Listen, if you clicked on this video, let's not try to pretend. I'm going to do the occasional YouTuber explanation of a phenomenon that has been retold millions of times on your screen, whilst you suffer and skip to the entertaining part of the video. But if I had a sponsorship, I sure as hell would do the same thing. Hey, speaking of which, nah, I'm just kidding. My socials are down below, and I have a commission form if you want any art done by me. Leave a like or subscribe. We're almost at 2K. Let's just get into it. Sonic.Exe, created by an absolute monster of a human being, which is now co-owned by 3 distinct users. Revy, Astronomicon, and Joe Doe Boy. Described in a literal sense, an internet sensation that transcends as a fan collaboration between thousands of users on the web orchestrating their own interpretations of the blue blur. Their own interpretations of the blue blur. Their own interpretations of the blue blur as a horror slasher that infests your computer. I mean, what is it with the internet and a fascination of malware? No, seriously, does anyone remember the anti-piracy trend? FNAF malware, analogs? They're all in one big trend of something in the system just trying to screw you over for what? Trying to play Super Mario? What does everyone have? Hey, little Timmy! He pirated, okay? Damn. We already got Nintendo lawsuits and you gotta scare the shit out of him? One day, I was watching Toadbop and I thought to myself, damn, these EXEs, they take a lot of time to direct, to work on. You have the art, you have the directors, you have the graphics. I wonder if I can make one myself. In which the worst idea that has ever struck my dome, hit it. This is me trying to make my own Sonic.Exe creepypasta in 24 hours. Now I will admit this entire title is a little bit clickbait. I'm going to be intending to do the old-fashioned horror story way and just writing the story and character designing. But if anyone is interested in utilizing this concept, be my guest. Any ideas on this channel? It's free of use for anyone really. If it's about another IP. I got original projects, but don't use it. I will sue you. With 2K subscribers. 9:20 a.m. I arrive at school continuing my studies. Yes, mom and dad, I do a lot of work. Look at this crossword puzzle that got me an A. Can you tell I'm a senior? In which case I began drawing out different interpretations of my Sonic executable file. Admittedly, I already had a concept the night before, but come on, I'm an ambitious person. Let me rest. I had daydreams about this opportunity. However, I just didn't anticipate how much fun I would be having making this. No, seriously, I loved drawing the different interpretations of the little blue blur because he's been a part of me for a very long time. And I remember the quiet eeriness that Sonic.Exe provided. That little old Star-Punz, fulfilling me with constant paranoia. Yeah, you're not alone. I was one of those kids who didn't want to take a crap in the middle of the night because he thought Sonic.Exe was in the darkness. The majority of my childhood was spent on video games and arts, in which case brings us to educational games. Collaborating the two to educate children in an entertaining focused method that allowed for students to have beloved characters give them challenges to learn on typing, spelling, computer functionality. Which was probably my personal favorite growing up as a kid. I remember this one game, SpongeBob SquarePants typing. You are an OG if you remember that shit, bro. I loved that fucking episode where like you had to do the snail racing. I know I was so pissed as a kid doing that stuff. But even then, these games always had an uncanny feeling to them. To me, I thought they were just people tired of having to explain to kids on how to type and would rather do anything else. Like, they're not the character themselves. Just someone forced to be in an effort of sharing something to the world. Education. Sonic.Exe interests into different forms of computer media, especially those in a children medium. So with the education side already intact, I was also thinking of those virtual pets you can have on your computer to interact with in hundreds of different ways. The perfect example of this being Bonsai Buddy. This baboon was the absolute GOAT. 10 toes down, he will always be there. In the heat of battle, he don't miss. In the midst of controversy, he don't miss. Let's give it up to my boy, Bonsai Buddy, bruh. Now, I took these two concepts into our beloved Hedgehog and created the idea of an education Sonic virtual pet, in which case we can use for fourth wall breaking exploits. I'm all about trying to reinterpret as to why a character does something, sort of like MCU movies making characters earn their established features as a way of showing growth in varying success. So we have our concept, but how do we design it exactly? 12 p.m. Well, I begin with probably one of my favorite designs when it comes to classic Sonic, Sonic OVA. Yeah, I was one of those kids who would scream out the line. You know it. You know the line. You know the line. You know everything I'm going to do, but I know everything you are going to do. Strange, isn't it? Please, Sonic 4, give us this line. Anyways, I thought about how at the time when I watched the OVA, I would always try to make my own versions of the fastest thing alive, and how it was so easy to be given bootleg things related to what you love. But you can never get over how much it influences you despite how shitty they can be. So yes, to answer the question before I show the colored version, this was inspired by Obama Harry Potter. This is Sonico Jr. Look at the baby, isn't he just the cutest kid? Look at him! Look at how cute he is! I just want to be just cute. A lot of his designs derives from junior-like characters such as Diddy Kong, Donkey Kong Jr. Sonico's design is something I really wanted to appeal to with children in the Department of Education, showcasing his communication skills in different languages, primarily for the time being Spanish, as a way for showing children or those of nonverbal in Mexico how to speak English and Spanish. Because everyone won't listen to a teacher, but everyone loves Sonic. But now we'll make him evil. And he's distorted, and he's this gremlin. He's this conniving dictator. He is God. Okay, massive time jump. I know. But I was spending most of the time just making the design of the EXE in the beginning and the idea of the story in my head. I work backwards. So I already have envisioned what the story in itself will be. I will update you guys when I finish the EXE story, in which I will read it out to y'all. So yeah, I guess that'll be like in a second, I guess. Or like, you can like skip to it, or maybe like right now. No, wait. Because if I'm writing this script while in time, but I'm reading this out now, but that's 11:20 p.m. That's not me rounding up a number. That's not me trying to be funny or make a bit. I did seriously have to spend until 11:20 writing this story. Okay, I did have a break watching Godzilla X Con with my friend. And had pizza. And did Marvel Rivals rank. Okay, give me a break. It was like 2 hours, alright? Being unemployed is so hard these days. With that out of the way, I would advise you to look into my Tumblr, where I will be uploading the entire story for you to read. The rest of this will be showcasing an audioable version of the Creepypasta. I also already submitted it into the website itself, creepypasta.com. It'll be under the user Star-Punz, and it'll be titled I Have No Blood. I don't know when they're gonna tip that. They said it'll take like 6 to 8 weeks. So it's fair. There's everyone tries to take a crack at it these days. But I just wanted to just sit back and relax. As the rest of this video will be a recorded reading of the story, I challenged myself into making it under 24 hours. Please be disappointed with my life choices, as much as I am. It's not actually my name. It's more of a John Doe. But you'll understand soon enough as to why my identity will mean as much as this story. I go by the header of Sonato123JJ. It summarizes the entirety of my teenage years into an unbelievable title that, frankly, I was too lazy to ever change. So please just list me as Zero. I've always grasped a fascination with the Sonic the Hedgehog series for a reason. something about seeing him resonates with me as wanting to branch off into being someone free. No longer becoming a passenger in my own life as waves after wave hit me. I'm sorry, I'm monologuing. This is a story of the boy with no blood. Not mine. This all started during 2 years ago. As mentioned before, I was an avid Sonic fan of all forms of this media. Despite negative reception coined by all my friends and just the internet in general, I still regarded these games as something to clutch onto for my time of comfort. Which led into my obsession of wanting all forms of his media. Anything. In the definition of the word, I guess you can say I was a hoarder. My friends often saw this as an issue with my infatuation. But at the end of every month, I gave some of these things away to a child or schools. I know I'm growing up, so eventually, I just gave it all away. And some of the more prized things onto listings in eBay. It was a step in my life that I thought would make my grandma proud. I didn't want to disappoint her anymore, so I needed to be an actual man for once. At least the one I tried to hide as. Just enough money to try and change that later. The number of hours spent dumpster diving and begging on eBay listings were all going out of my own room as I tried getting ready for college. If anyone could try and convince me to stop from what I was doing that time, I would thank them. But I really needed that money. As stated before, I was being housed by my grandmother. This story won't explain why. Situations are situations. A week passed of me shelving out everything until I received a message listing the transactions of one of my prized possessions. One of the Sonic Adventure 2 soap shoes plushies. Gosh, they were so cool. So I had to hop on the opportunity as soon as I got the notice. But the person biting off me was wondering if I was interested in receiving a novelty of his own that he's been wanting to give away for a while. His name in the story is Tyler, an old rigid man past his prime who was collecting for the sake of reliving something that was lost to him. Hello? 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 You're interested in purchasing my plushie? Oh! Hello? Hello? You're interested in purchasing my plushie, is that correct? Yes, that is correct. I've been hoarding for a while myself and have the payment already getting ready, but I was just wondering as to why this was being listed at a lower price than normal. Obviously, because auction goes out of control. I'm too scared to deal with any of that, so just shadow dropping it was enough for me to get it over with. Besides, I can't convince people even if I tried. I see. I see. That's quite honest of you. Would you be interested in a Sonic novelty? It's a one-of-a-kind copy of Sonic's Virtual Learning. Well, it's not an actual game by Sega. It's a messaging company-produced ripoff to try and use Sonic as a teacher. So like Sonic's Schoolhouse. I guess the Spanish version. It's sort of like a virtual pet. I should sit in a USB drive, considering you're losing out on some good money here. I feel like this is something to be compensated with. I thought to myself, what an odd thing to give someone on the internet. Especially for free with eBay. I'm trying to let go of all my things, so this really won't help. Besides, I was really craving to say yes, so using this as a test of my strength was really something. I'm sorry, but no. Though I thank you for the offer. This was the last message before the toy was shipped off. My grandma always warns me about attempting things from strangers. Even less something that could mess up the family computer, as dumb as a USB drive. Could have had anything in it. 2 weeks went by. I would say about 50% of my collection was already gone at this point. I was feeling like I was losing a part of me that I never thought I could live without. Though at times I did cry. Nothing more I could do. A testament to how much I was trying to be someone I was not. At the unspoken stage, even my grandmother didn't want to admit it. So I just kept on selling what remained. But that love still lingered. Considering my lack of friends at the time, I could not concern myself with embarrassing myself more than I already do as of now. That wasn't until I checked the mail in our apartment's mailbox, room 34. It was open. Someone left it open, despite the keyhole insisting it should have been sealed. I reached into the container and saw a yellow envelope. No address delivered back or post. It was as if someone just reached into my mailbox to leave it there, which was impossible considering the key is still in my pocket. I gave the usual bills to my grandmother, including all but medical. I didn't want her to know about the incident, so I was just paying that myself. I lodged myself in the darkness of my room again, sustaining myself with the necessary nutrients, which was just a Cliff Bar. Scrolling through job applications, mail position, mail. I look over to the yellow envelope I left on my bed. I couldn't be bothered more than I already was with having to turn over a new leaf, so it wouldn't hurt. Besides, if it was a bomb, then I wouldn't have to worry about anything later. I peel the seal open with my long nails and pull out the bubble wrapping, revealing a purple USB drive. Oh joy, I have an old man stalking me and he left me with his picture. I thought to myself. Actual sick people on the internet. I knew it should have just blocked them. I looked into the eBay account. I listed a billing in to contact Tyler again. However, eBay listed the account as unfound. The sick bastard covered his trails and thinks he could get away with it. For a few days, I just left it rotting in my desk drawer considering I was too busy with finals. But it always lingered in my head. Nothing could anticipate what remained in that file. I wasn't willing to risk it. Despite how many times I've been called a moron, even I knew this was too wrong to be in my possession. I go on over to the police station reporting that someone broke into my apartment's mailbox, showing them my key and the USB. If I had anything in there, then that would go against the law. I should not be liable. Not with the time I was having in my life right now. Obviously, they didn't pay much mind, but just to the report. The USB. In 2 hours of my damn time in line. A week later, I got a knock on the door. It was a loud banging on a Saturday afternoon. Obviously, I had only my pajamas on, so having to build the courage to open the door was too much. I pleaded with my grandmother to do so. She groaned but complied, only to find an officer at the door. It was a lean woman wearing her uniform with a plastic baggie in hand. Please tell your son to stop wasting our time. He left his stupid game in our office complaining that this was a warrant of a virus or something serious. Even the boys down by the home didn't think of any of this. It was serious. We have actual things to do. Some of the words still ring in my ears, but not the ones you would think. My grandmama apologized and brought me over in my bunny slippers to do the same. Before the officer left, as per usual, I was left with a bantered Law and Order explaining lecture regarding how annoying I could be at times. I couldn't care less at this point. By the time I left the kitchen, she was already making dinner talking to herself about me. At the end of the day, I did my usual. Nothing in particular, but I finally got an interview ready for Tuesday. I felt really proud of myself for being able to find something in spite of the day I was having, but it didn't remind me of why it felt this way. That damn drive. A joke? A big joke? Was it him? I'm just an idiot who left it up to the police to handle these things, so of course I'll find it a joke. Fine, I'll fix it myself. In an almost fit of rage, I slammed the USB right into my PC's import, just begging it be over with at this point. But in spite of it started downloading something. I felt the Adam's apple in my throat grow tense as I gazed my LED screen, feeling a sense of regret wash over me, even more considering I had potentially just wasted the only computer I'll own in my life, as long as I'm under this roof. But when it downloaded, it showed an icon of a set of blots stacked on top of each other, starting from the top to the bottom reading S, V, L. Sonnet's virtual learning listed underneath on the application, so it really was the same guy who had bothered me. Had his account was still up, I could probably try reporting him, but at this point it was just a loss in even trying anything. As frustrated as I was more intrigued than anything else. Considering everything, I clicked twice on my mouse as I dragged my pointer over to the app. The PC wasn't the best at the moment, even behind the whole Windows update. But it managed with the hardware itself being fairly old in retrospect. The game booted up, with the logo of Educa Yuda on the front before my speakers blared me with the typical Sega logo, piercing my ears with something I haven't heard in quite a while. Considering I already sold my Genesis console at this point, it felt refreshing. The app itself began loading as I was installing more programs onto my computer. Gosh, what was I even thinking? This is quite obviously a virus. Why am I like this? Could I have not just been a son for once in my life and think with a decent brain? Damn it, the loading. Why is it taking so long? I accepted the terms of service without even reading anything. Why am I like this? Why? I see! My heart rushed with anxiety, deciphering my future, of trying to pay off this was already in the back of my brain, but I heard a squeaky accent speak out of the computer. A warplane appeared above the clock on the bar, spinning in motion until Sonic the Hedgehog leaped out of the portal. His sprite looked quite different. All of his tan skin replaced with a radiant yellow. The cuffs on his gloves and socks were replaced with pitch black, and they wore a red hat spelling out the words JR, or Junior. My eyes forced their attention to the rodent on my screen, as the cartoon looked around in my PC with his hands on his eyes forming goggles until his eyes looked right at the screen. His pitch black pupils stared at me with glee intent. He pulls his hands away and raises his left to form a greeting hello. In which case a Windows tab opened up, listed as Sonic Jr.'s fonts, appropriately showing a font bubble in the tab surrounded with a black void. In which case he said, "Hola, yo me llamo Sonico Jr. Y tú eres." Underneath was the text-box, in which I could respond with. I pulled out my phone to use Google Translate to uncover his question. For the sake of this telling, I wrote 0. "Qué bien, hablas inglés o español?" English. "Ah, entiendo. I will talk to you in English to learn Spanish." It sounded like a small child trying his best to form English sentences. I found the entire thing quite adorable considering I was needing help to even understand him. "Are you a boy, niño, or a girl, niña?" I looked on over to my left, and then to my right, answering the correct response. "Eh bien, that means how good or just good. Mi nombre, my name, is Sonico Jr." I giggled at the sight of this little man on my desktop. Noticing how much attention I haven't been giving this media in quite a long time, I answered the text box underneath with, "Nice to meet you." "It's great to meet you, Zero. Are you ready to play a game with me?" "Yes." "Yahoo!" he replied as he jumped in a spin above my soundbar. He really was like a virtual pet. Before I could find a way to respond, however, a timer began to count down with a sans serif font starting from 3. Once the countdown was done, I met with a junior on the far left of my screen getting ready as my PC automatically articulated a stage using other windows open on my screen, all trailed with letters as replacement for rings, spelling out FAMILIA. Once it hit 0, a timer showed up filing 10 seconds. My fingers were already pressed against the right button and using space to format the word. As each word flew to the top of the screen, jumping on top of each window using him as solid ground. At the end, he reaches his hands out and smiles. Familia! That's what we are, all of us, todos! It was already 9 in the afternoon. The feeling of the weight of school in the morning swept away as I continued to play with the virtual hedgehog. I learned that the mouse was in fact more interactable with the character than I thought. Whenever I placed it on top of his head and rubbed it against his ears, he enjoyed the petting from me. I was also able to drag him around the windows, placing him down or above, even inside of some browsers. Obviously, it was not compatible with everything, but it was so fun seeing him trying to push images across the screen out of my Chrome bar. 12:34 p.m. After a long day in order to log Sonico off of my computer, I would press on the giant X on the right corner of my screen. He would start to feel drowsy, yawn, and tell me, "Buenas noches," walking right off to the front of the screen. Walking right off to the right of my screen, to not be seen following the window of SVL closing entirely. Before I turned off my PC for the night, I found a txt file on the side of my tabs that loaded as soon as my other applications turned off. I double-clicked it to show a drawing done in Microsoft Paint. utilizing a paint tool to show Sonic Jr. poorly shown on screen, waving me with a smile. On the left saying, Buenas noches. This did instill within me some joy as I saved the drawing into a new folder before logging off for the night. A few days passed in which every day I would run in on some challenges for the game while auctioning off all the rest of my things. Even after this interaction and finding the USB drive, I didn't want to risk anyone seeking me. But even if the game itself could have had something in it, it gave me a sense of comfort I haven't felt since starting my collection. Each night before I logged off, he would provide me a drawing made by him, as if it were something a child were to show me to be placed on the fridge, each one titled with the exact date of my progress. This went on for a week as I continued his challenges, resulting in me learning some Spanish I didn't think I needed to know. It really helped my exams. By Sunday, it would come into the application just to see Sonic Jr. run around on my computer as I continued my schoolwork. Considering I was already in a job at this point from the interview, starting Monday I wasn't going to be able to have as much time as I wished to have with Junior. Something in peculiar happened, however, as he began looking at my work. At the time I was in anatomy filing out my work. I really wanted to be a nurse at this point, so my studies were solely focused on trying to gain enough so that I was applicable for a scholarship. But I was stuck on one of the questions. I was not familiar with searching up answers. I needed to know more. We were following the subject on the heart. One of the questions being, what is the very large veins that bring the oxygenated blood to your heart to get oxygen? The superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. The thought bubble showed up unprovoked. I had placed him on the side of the window for a reason, but he had answered it by himself. I filled in the bubble from the multiple choice question and, congratulating me getting the right answer, Sonic Jr. continued to do nothing but jump up and down from window to window until it was stuck on another question. The left ventricle! Silence fell in the air as I saw him do it one more. This time in a monotone voice pitched that was filled from the rodent. I looked on over to the choices before pressing on the answer. I felt my heart drop from the body, sweat pouring in not from my head to the chin. I pressed on. Before I could even read the questions, he answered again. Left atrium. I tried to follow in the question, but it was already pressed for me. Had I already pressed it on accident? I did pay attention to Junior, and my hand was still on the mouse. Perhaps this is part of the treatment process. I pressed forward. The sinus node. I didn't even scroll to the next question. I was simply staring at my screen, perplexed by the compelling usage of this artificial hedgehog. I looked right at him. I felt like he was trying to pretend he wasn't there, like he was playing with me, and me only for what? A kick? Does he think I'm too stupid to even try it myself? I felt the revelation in my skin shiver down to my bones. Does he want to play a game with me? In an effort to show him where I stood, I quickly dragged my mouse above his head and began lifting him in the air, flying around the screen, shaking my mouse, dragging it back and forth, watching him dangle on my cursor for dear life. When I was done having my fun, I think I had kind of a panic attack. Did I just hurt him for trying to help me? I was having so much fun applying this to him. Everything I do will be just like him, won't it? I got off the computer for a moment to go to the bathroom, feeling an illness in my stomach creep over, comprised of guilt. Dinner passed, in which I came back to my desk only to find Junior gone, but the X on the right was still there. Hurriedly, I searched my folders to try and find them, in which case I remembered the drawings folder. It was drawn as well. I felt a sudden shock as I looked into the recycling bin, finding the folder inside. I recovered the images from the bin and I heard a sound of sobbing. I looked everywhere in the folders to try and find them, until I accidentally pulled aside the window I was doing my homework on. He was hiding behind it. I clicked X on the tab and slowly placed my cursor beside his head, slowly caressing his head in an effort to comfort him. A thought appeared. I can't cry. I can't cry. Why? I can't cry. The Sonic cartoon slowly hugged the mouse, feeling the comfort of the white cursor, embracing him as he continued to pet him. That night I didn't turn him off. I was keeping him on at all times to apologize, but mostly to monitor him. Something scared me, but it seems like he was more afraid of me than anything else. A few minutes later, it was like he was back to his natural state, shouting in Spanish Sonic catchphrases as he played around on my window. Even during my homework, he wasn't even continuing to answer any of my questions on the paper. I thought to myself as to how I can engage him on my work, remembering how he was only able to access the folders that came from the drawings. I placed the multiple choice review in the drawings folder for him to hopefully do. The night came, in which case I left him on as promised, but found in the folder a copy of my homework, filing every answer correctly, but showing noodles of the heart on the side of the paper. He was learning alongside me. It was a fascinating discovery until I reached down to the bottom of the paper, reading a title that had not been seen in my heart for years. Mother. Before I could question Junior, I watched as he exited the stage right. Nothing entailed right after. I felt as though I had grasped the ironies of the situation. Days followed. I started working over the course of a week, completely forgetting about the boy left on my computer. I thought to myself that I had already done enough to him. If he really was alive inside, then he was better left alone than to disturb him. I'd get back home Thursday with my grandmother already waiting for me, knocking me on the head with a newspaper as she pointed right at the computer before leaving. It seemed like Cat was off the bag at this point, but no harm in having a bit of fun considering the long day I've had. Junior was in no means a virus, he was just a boy. He was just a boy. At that moment before I turned on the monitor, it dawned upon me. I had left him alone for a week. I had left to him, to his own thoughts, confided for the sole amusement being all of my files. What could he have learned at that time? I felt as though I had left him. I went to quickly log into my account. Loading in, nothing of any interest was any different, except the fact that the ads on the top right had been clicked. Junior was gone, and it was all of my grandmother's fault. Had I done something sooner, I should have known he wouldn't be okay alone. But then I remembered. Every day he would leave a drawing for me. Something to communicate with. Was he generating something more? Dragging my shivery fingers to the folder, I opened the images, finding a trail of images. These are the following. An image of a boy holding the hands of his father and mother beside the beach. The boy alone on the beach. The boy alone on the beach with his mother. The father on an island alone from the family. But this is where the drawings ended. It was curious considering this was this wasn't peculiar considering 4 days had gone by. Only 3 drawings were shown in that folder, but I see that there is another modified copy of the hard anatomy homework that I had left for Junior to discover inside. I clicked on it and began reading. He was learning. He began breaking down more and more about the human heart, where the vessels originated from. He was slowly forming out blood as a concept familiar to human survival, inscribing with the paint tool, stating, "Is red blood? Do I have blood? Does my heart beat the same as Mama?" Questions lingered as we began trying to adapt to more of my language from my answers in the document. I scrolled to the end of the file. It was originally an empty, blank page meant for filing your name. But what I have found was an identity, the same as the one I would have written. He had drawn an entire human circulatory system, articulating by reds and blues, naming each one R, with the heart missing from the in-depth analysis on the human body. I placed the document to the side before booting out SVL one more time, hearing the 2 introductions once more. I was greeted by him on the ground. The monitor had turned into the typical blue screen, but there was no error message. Just him in the middle of it. I gazed upon the child as he looked right at me. I knew it was him staring at me because my webcam had turned on. A window popped up with my face right on it, staring right at him. He looked at me for a moment, incapable of having to witness what was facing him at this very moment. I slowly placed my hand on the camera, in which he did the same. His back turned to me on the monitor, but his palm up against mine on the window, reflecting my camera. What are we? It was another question. The same as the one from the beginning when he was teaching me Spanish. I knew the answer was spelled out from the beginning. Family. The boy stared at the answer as I typed it in. I wasn't able to input the answer as he was fully capable of just looking at it himself. His reality was comprised of 2-dimensional box. I was the only thing he will and has ever known in this void. It was reckless of me leaving him, but why do I feel sorry? This virus is forcing me to care for a program. It was forcing me to do something that no one had ever done to me. No one had cared to do for me. My fingers shake as I stared right at the camera. I slowly pulled in, back before looking down. Junior stared at me in confusion. F-A-M-I-L-Y. F-A-M-I-L. F-A-M-I. F-A-M. F-A-F. N-N-O-N-O-T. N-O-T-H. N-O-T-H-I. N-O-T-H-I-N. N-O-T-H-I-N-G. I had to let go of him. I had to let go of this obsession. I was not to be tied from a simple bio that believes it is more. He cried. He made those sounds that imitated crying. He was trying so hard to be human. He was trying so hard to be something he wasn't, something that he could never be. He thinks it's so easy to be someone he isn't. This conclusion resorted to my defiance. I had already set out on what I was going to do. Junior saw my realization. He popped another question. Why are we... I felt the shivering down my spine as I started this question. He was trying so hard to understand me, to understand what I had lost. Why did he have to mock me? He knows everything about me because he's seen everything in my computer. My photos of my family, my freedom. He saw why I was nothing. In a fit of rage, I grabbed the keyboard, slamming it against the PC, pleading for him to get out, as he felt the internal software begin to break in itself. His cries began growing louder and louder. His pain was my pain, something I had to hide for the rest of my life. I pulled the cover of the PC to the internal software and began tearing into it. I smiled. I felt nothing. As I lowered my keyboard, a tear ran down my cheek as I felt it. I had killed my boy. I had killed my boy. I looked down at him. The monitor. It had already taken shape of him. Broken, shattered glass splattered across the floor, trying to find its place. I grabbed it against my chest, crying as I felt no warmth. He was cold. For a month straight, I was no longer permitted to any activities outside of school and work. Trying to pay off the computer so that my grandmother could properly file her medication and taxes, in which case I resorted to driving her to the local library. My chest still hurts sometimes. Feeling the cuts against my chest, I tried to lie and say Robert got in, but she knew better than anyone that I just wasn't well. She would have called the police had it not just looked as pathetic as I did. All I had left was my phone to no one to pick her up. She always insisted I was better off at an asylum, but what could I do besides agree with her in silence? It was 9:30 by the time we got back home after a long day at the bank trying to file a loan. I leapt to the couch as my grandmother sat beside me. Both of us exhausted from the tribulations that came with affording to live. She looked down at me, almost in pity. I'll go make some tea. My eyes were too busy staring at the ceiling fan to even acknowledge her. I felt almost draining just listening to any more voices. That wasn't until there was one last sound. A notification from my phone. It was an email. I've only started using them now due to the adult world I'm trying to put myself in, but this one was quite odd. It was an email to myself. I checked it to view what it could entail, only to be shocked that the message itself said it had sent out to 100 other accounts. It was so strange until I saw it correlated to the student email. All of them. In my school. The email itself? It was a drawing by Junior. It was the husk of a body with only the circulatory system showing, with the reds and blue trailing behind the rest of what he was, what he wanted to be. A man. With the words on the bottom being, I have no blood. He had logged into my school account, managed to send a message to the virtual world that transcends his own. That he has stated to become something more. He was growing. He was becoming a god in a world where no one can hear him scream. But me. Alrighty then. What do you guys think of that? I hope you all enjoyed this little take on Sonic.Exe itself. If this video does well, I'm planning to do a sequel of it. I really wanted to do a lot more with him as a character. Yeah. There's some obvious imagery in this one. I would really like some feedback back on it. If I had more time, I really did like this. I did. I really loved doing it. I think if I had more time to flesh it out, I really would. Maybe someday I'll like do a remastered version or something like that. But yeah, and if anyone wants to take this interpretation in any way they want. That's totally cool with me. Just say, hey, this was done by Star-Punz. Who? The monkey. Yeah, that guy. Not the Robin Williams one. We all fucking got annoyed of that one. But, hope you all enjoyed your day. Do you guys ever have an aneurysm after an Altered alba